Welcome everybody to the meeting this evening, and the first thing is the evacuation procedure, which I think we'll probably there's a location plan on the exits and the entry points situated on the doors of this room. Please familiarise yourself with it. On discovering a fire, please carry out the following: sound the alarm, attack fire if possible and safe to do so using appliances provided. And hearing the evacuate signal, please carry out the following: exit the building by your nearest safest exit. All visitors report to Assembly Point G. All staff report to their designated assembly point on the Walkway car park. Do not leave the assembly point for any reason until to do so by the incident controller or the fire brigade officer. Before we move into the meeting, I'd just like to remember one of our stalwart councillors from a few years ago, Gordon Sharrett. Several of us went to the Gordon's funeral a couple of weeks ago. If we could just bow our heads for a few moments, please. Thank you. On to the agenda. Item 2, apologies for absence.
Apologies from councillors Jens, Osborne, Elsmith and Andy Wright.
Okay, thank you. Declarations of personal or prejudicial interest. Thank you. The Mayor to move in accordance with Standing Order 6(1) that the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 28th of July 2021 be approved as a correct record. Would you like to so?
Move.
Moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Singh. All those in favour? Anyone to the contrary? Thank you. Receive the Mayor's announcements. Firstly, I'd like to thank Mr. Tobin for the excellent risk assessment that he's done on this thing, and it's all designed to keep us in a safe environment. So I'd like just to record that having read the assessment, I think he's done an excellent job with it, and hopefully it keeps us all in a very safe environment. The cycle race, which is next Wednesday, starting in Long Street, doing a circuit round through Baxley, Bentley, Birchley, Ridge Lane, back down Steppy Lane into Manchester, and then back into the town, up Ratcliffe Street, and finishing in the Market Square. I hopefully have a good day with that, and welcome the cycle race back to the town for the 4th time, which I believe is a record for any town in the country with this particular race. One announcement that Mr. Maxey has asked me to make, that before our next full council meeting, was one of the officers retires, and that's Robert Beggs, and he has done in excess of 40 years service to North Warwickshire Borough Council. Chair. Councillor Riley. Sorry.
That's good. Can I just put on record my personal thanks to Robert Beggs for his professionalism, for his professional knowledge, and for his capacity to do untold amounts of work for the good of North Warwickshire. Mayor, you've said that Robert has worked for North Warwickshire for 40 years, and I'm minded to think that he is probably the longest serving public servant in North Warwickshire dealing with community safety, whether that be fire or whether that be police. I really do think that Robert's contribution to the safety of our community is fundamental, and he is one of those officers that does so much with so little fuss that he will be a loss without any doubt. So I am exceptionally grateful for all the help that Robert has given us, and I am wishing him well in his new life, wherever that be.
Okay. Councillor Close?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Denise,
I'd just like to thank what Councillor Riley's just said. I've been on Safer Sub since I became a councillor and worked with Robert. And he's one of these officers that goes above and beyond his job. You can phone him up at any time or send him an email, and the email is normally back that day if he's in the office that day. And it's going to be a great loss for North Warwickshire losing this officer. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Parsons? And
Yeah,
Councillor Mawson?
I'd just like to echo what's been said. In fact, I had a meeting with Robert today. At Polesworth Parish Council, we've sort of sallied into CCTV, and Robert's work and advice on how to get there and to make it an effective system has been absolutely invaluable. He was there today helping us to try and further the system, yes, he's made a major contribution, as has been said. Always very unassuming, always very sound and good advice, and which makes it easy to follow. Yes, I'd like to join in wishing him a very happy retirement.
Councillor Parsons? Councillor Mawson? Sit down, please.
So I have to go. You want it? Just to say, good, help me leg out for standing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to say, when I joined the council, Robert come along. He was a young intern, and he was my officer when we started the committee for safety together. Both of us worked together over the years and went through it. I found it very interesting, immensely helpful, and I'll be surely missed. And I met him in the car park the other day when I came down, and he told me he'd finish it. And I said, what a shame, he'd be missed, and he will be missed. And I wish him and his family all the best for the future.
Thank you. I think I would echo it from the chair that anybody that puts 40 years service into any organisation is an asset. And we just all must wish Robert and his family all the best and a long and healthy retirement.
Yeah.
Thank you. Item 6, to answer questions from members and public in pursuant of Standing Order number 7. I believe you've got one question, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question that has been submitted by Wayne Gibbons, an Atherstone resident. I shall read the question and then my reply. With respect to the letter sent by North Warwickshire Borough Council on the 16th of September 2021 regarding the AJ Bell Women's Tour 2021, Wednesday the 6th of October, a quotation from Councillor David Wright states that the event will provide a fantastic boost to the local area. The letter goes on to assert that the event will bring important benefits to Atherstone. What metric is used by North Warwickshire Borough Council to assess boosts and or benefits? How, when and where is data collected to support the statements contained in the letter? Finally, assuming that you can quantify the effects of this event, how does it compare to other events held in Atherstone, which aren't held in the middle of a working week and appear to have more community involvement? My answer is as follows. I am grateful for the interest being shown by the public in the AJ Bell Women's Time Trials being hosted in Atherstone on Wednesday, the 6th of October. I believe the event will be a boost for the local area, not least as there has never been a time trial in the history of the Women's Tour, and Atherstone is therefore hosting the prime event of this year's tour. The view is based on metrics, but also longer-term factors that cannot be directly measured. For example, a report on a previous occasion that Atherstone was involved in the Women's Tour stated that 15,000 people attended the event with a net visitor additional spend of over £270,000. 92% of those attending rated the event as very good, and 62% said it would inspire them to cycle more often. Given the national and international focus of this event, there is not a meaningful way of comparing them with other much liked events held in Atherstone. As with previous years, we do not have a say on which day the women's tour comes to Atherstone, but even midweek, a return of over £270,000 for our modest investment into the event represent a good return.
Thank you, councillor Wright. Any questions, Mr. Thank you. Item 7, to receive and consider the recommendations of the Executive Board circulated herewith and to make the necessary decisions thereon. Item 8, to receive the recommendation in relation to the detailed budget approach for the 2022-23 General Fund budget, pages 30 to 46 in the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I move that the recommendation of the executive board circulated under A and B be accepted.
Seconded.
Moved by councillor Wright, seconded by councillor Hayfield. Take item A first. All those for, please show. Oh, sorry. Does anybody want to speak on that item? Sorry. It's page 30 to 46 in the agenda. It was circulated some days ago. Any speakers? It has been proposed.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In my summing up, I'm pleased that the opposition support the financial measures that we are taking and our budget proposals moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We to put that to the vote. All those in favour, please show. All those to the contrary, please show.
Nothing to say. Not very strange.
That vote is carried. Thank you. Moving on to item B, from the to receive the recommendation to adopt the local plan, pages 47 to 280 in the agenda. And again, it was circulated some while ago. Does anybody like to speak on that? Councillor Gosling?
Thank you. I think, do you mind if I say?
Yes, sure, yeah.
I think it's an understatement to say that the Labour Group haven't shared the positive vision and the warmth which this plan seems to have been accepted with, and it will come as no surprise that we still don't. That said, we do have to acknowledge the extreme amount of effort and skill that the team put in. And even without being able to share the vision, we can respect the limitations of resources around. It was a huge task to actually put this together and to complete this in the time that she's had. It's frustrating that the LDF hasn't been as involved as it could have been recently in the process, and it would have seemed as if some level of scrutiny would have been in place to oversee these final crucial stages. This plan is supposed to deliver a positive, aspirational, secure foundation to build our vibrant and sustainable communities on. However, it's quite clear from the inspector's report that sometimes harshly states that his judgment of this plan, using phrases like unjustified, unduly prescriptive, undermining policies, inaccurate reflections of national policies, and the failure to provide a clear basis for decision making, that this plan is not well received on any level. The inspector's report further compounds the challenges of delivering this plan, despite the confirmation from Birmingham City Council. One of the things that we've maintained all along is that the number of houses committed to the duty to cooperate exceeds what would have been required. They cite a figure of around merely 2,155 as a more proportionate rather than the extensive houses that we took. Our borough is now wholly committed, not just ambitiously aspiring to meet nearly 10,000 homes. These now need to be delivered in a very real and concrete way as a minimum requirement. This is one new dwelling per 3 that actually exists today, which is unprecedented and possibly unachievable, and in my view, harmful to the very nature of our beautiful rural world. If this level was distributed evenly across all the settlements, it would be bad enough. But to dump this burden on Polesworth, Dordon, Atherstone, Hartshill, Ansel Common, Coleshill, and others is unfair and compounds the negative impact massively. It will cause irreparable damage to the character and the essences of these settlements. Councillors claiming to be representing these residents in these areas, whilst justifying supporting this plan, is beyond me. I'm not sure. I'm sure the implications of what we're about to do are going to have long-lasting repercussions in our communities. Despite assurances that this plan would be worth it, the greater good, we would be saved. We would have guided and protected our communities from the perils and the chaos of unwanted developments. The inspector calls into question many of the attempts to achieve this and regularly calls for more flexibility around biodiversity, climate change, strategic gap, development in Greenbelt, parking at Birmingham Airport, employment land, and even the basis of the hierarchy system itself, which the entire plan is based on, the entire control of the developments. He insists that all settlements, including the Little Fours and Fives, have a role to play in sustainable development in this borough. So nowhere is truly protected. The descriptions of the blanket policies as crude and a requirement to judge every development on its own merits have huge undertakings and will add to the doubt of the deliverability of this plan and a greater risk to the villages and towns of the inappropriate chaotic development. The doubling of the employment lands and the expectations will leave the meaningful gap much less meaningful. Even with the welcome definition and the clarity of the strategic gap, but still further calls for flexibility around the potential development within the gap, claiming that certain schemes could be accommodated. And the challenge is to mitigate HS2 and the impact on this area. This leaves us less capable of controlling the diversity and the quality of employment, more susceptible to another increase in logistics and storage, which already dominates the employment in our borough. The adoption of this plan goes to allocate over 100 hectares of employment land, the minimum required. The lorry park at Junction 10, if it passes, which it looks like under this plan it may, is going to make Labour's Green Village look like a paradise in comparison. It makes a mockery out of the climate change emergency declarations and any ambitions that North Warwickshire has towards a green revolution. And I'm sure that councillors on both sides agree that this is a heavier price than anyone is really comfortable with. All this, of course, is based on the assumption that this plan is even deliverable. And there are reassurances around the immediate potential to deliver the 5-year land bank, despite starting with a shortfall already in place. At least the predicted delivery for the next couple of years exceeds our commitment. But it has to be noted that this is based on planning permissions granted in a national context where 1.1 million such permissions have been granted and not being delivered. It is simply not in the interest of any developer to reduce the market shortages which drive up prices and profits. And then we get to the step change to 2025. It's only 27 months away. That's 27 planning meetings, 9 or 10 full councils, and then all of a sudden we're into a stage where we have to provide 700 dwellings per year. It rapidly rises to 775. We're struggling at the moment to deliver 200, and the impact on our communities is going to be brutal, especially to Polesworth and Dordon. Let alone the logistics of actually trying to deliver this in a coordinated, joined up and cohesive way. The numbers of agencies and authorities needed. Do we foresee weekly planning meetings, quadrupled numbers of officers, office space, every weekend site visits? Not too long ago, the borough was having difficulty securing one enforcement officer. Given our track record and difficulties attracting the right people now and the training, we have 27 months. And then there's the big issue, the infrastructures. Allocations, which the inspector describes as haphazard, and again, more flexibility. When will provide infrastructure is now downgraded to where necessary, forcing an approach where we will be called on to justify measures and mitigate the effects of the development. Everything will have to be up for negotiation, up for discussion on a case-by-case basis. The biggest impact of all of this will, of course, be on the A5. a long-term bugbear and already a limiting factor. Without it, this plan falls down. It has long been known that this road desperately needs improvement, and the challenges around overcoming the complexities across difficulties of the different authorities is huge. The suspension of the Longshoot programme already cast doubt on whether this project is even achievable. A project that, after it's completed, will only be the least worst scenario. An ambition is not to fix or improve it, just to damage limitation, the best case scenario still being 10% worse than current.
Can I ask you to sum up, please, Councillor Gosling?
Certainly. For my local concerns, Ansty Common has been told it can't already have the infrastructures, the crossings, the speed cameras, the improvements to the parks, even though there is significant evidence towards it, and a doubling in the size of its villages. The infrastructure will not be in place to support our communities. And when the increased flexibility and the strategic gap, the hierarchy and even the green belt, this presents a massive risk. It cannot sit comfortably with everybody. As soon as this plan begins to fail, the land bank, bearing in mind, will be up to 4,000 dwellings in just 27 months. I appreciate the consequences of not accepting this plan are also dire, and I do appreciate that, especially with the modifications, we're damned if we do and damned if we don't. And I think it's fair to say that I would find it impossible to support this plan and urge those who live in these communities to support their neighbourhoods. The deficiencies identified by the inspector highlight the impact that it will have for decades.
Thank you, Councillor Gosling. Any other comments? No. Oh, sorry, Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I've got my blinkers on, that's all.
That's all right. I'll let you know. I recommend this plan to council. Without doubt, it has been a challenge. It's been an interesting journey. I think I'm probably the only councillor that attended every one of the inspector hearings or read up on the results that came out. And without doubt, a strength of feeling from some communities was exceptionally well represented to those hearings. But after 460 consultation responses, after 4 sets of public hearings, the inspector has judged the plan sound. And that is a fundamental, important legal decision. This plan is sound and it can be delivered. And I think, Mr. Mayor, I hear everything that colleagues say, but I would draw everybody's attention to page 54. And page 54 outlines the risks should we not choose to adopt the local plan. And for those people that are looking on iPad, which I appreciate is a challenge, development by appeal. So no control over development in North Warwickshire. Possible government intervention. Potential loss of infrastructure benefits that will come through the plan. And finally, working to a core strategy agreed in 2014 that is now recognised as being out of date and not suitable. So without doubt, it has been a challenge and it's been an interesting journey, not least of all interrupted by COVID and the 42 months it's taken us to get from the point of submission to standing here tonight. That's not what any of us would have wished. However, this is a fundamental document moving forward for North Warwickshire to take us up to 2033 and to see us grow as a community, receive investment in our community and hopefully make North Warwickshire a more prosperous place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Chair. If you don't mind, I'll stay
Yes,
seated.
sir.
I just wanted to pick up on the big issue for me, which is given the struggle to get to where we are and the issues for the capacity of this authority, I think there are going to be capacity issues in the delivery of the plan. And I think in taking this plan on, this authority needs to recognise how stretched our resources already are. And I just want to raise the question of how we anticipate being able to monitor adequately, to take action in time, to actually put things in place that ensure the plan is delivered. I think it will be a struggle.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Parsons.
Thank you, Chair. I do appreciate the hard work that has gone into this plan, and it is there. But I have to say that fundamentally, I believe this plan was flawed from the start. The acceptance of 3,750 houses from Birmingham was, in short, an error, a mistake. Solihull, I believe, has accepted 2,200 houses. I may stand to be corrected on that, but that is where the figure should have been. And that is a distortion which runs right through this plan. I'm really concerned that the LDF hasn't continued to meet and monitor this plan. And I think that really does raise the issue of the monitoring of this plan. In particular, with regard to the infrastructure, we've heard a lot of promises about the infrastructure in Polesworth and Dordon. And to date, I don't see anything at all which actually suggests that that infrastructure plan is going to be adequate. I was looking at the road system. The A5 is obviously the big issue, but we know that probably the major road issue, well, certainly in Polesworth, is actually there. The canal bridges are mentioned, yes. Widen the canal bridges. That's an excellent idea. I'm not against that. But of course, what you do then by widening the canal bridges is to increase the speed of traffic through the busiest section of Polesworth. And yet there is no mention of speed reduction measures there. There is nothing concrete in the infrastructure. It's vague, it's bitty, it's haphazard, to quote the inspector, and it's not there. When I walk around Atherstone, I see infrastructure. I see a swimming pool. I know it's in need of repair, but I see a swimming pool. I see a gym. I see, a reasonable leisure centre there. Now, in Polesworth, we had a rundown, as I said. There's been a breakdown in the relationship between this council and the school. We could argue about whose fault that is. We're getting a temporary gym. How temporary is temporary. I'm not arguing with the gym. Yeah, great.
Are we debating the local plan or the Polesworth Leisure Centre, Mr Mayor?
Sorry?
Are we debating the local plan or the
Well, I'm not
Polesworth
really
Leisure
sure,
Centre, Mr
Councillor.
Mayor? I'm
Perhaps-
sure that's further on in the agenda.
What I am debating is the lack of provision of infrastructure. And that I don't think you're addressing. But if you are going to address it, I'd be delighted to hear it. So that's my fundamental objections to this plan. We come to the strategic gap, and that's, that was good news, strengthening the strategic gap. And yet what we hear now is this very real plan of a huge lorry park going right to the border of the village of Birchmoor. The residents there are deeply disturbed about that, and we shall see.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. Could I ask the councillor to point me to the point of the plan where a huge lorry park is proposed right to the border of the village of Birchmoor? Where is that in the plan, please?
It isn't there.
What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is the proposal which is there, which is in front of the people of Polesworth, which is in front of the people of Birchmoor. It may be nothing to you.
Can I ask
It
you
is
to
there
stick to the agenda item, please?
Where is this in the plan? We're talking about the borough plan. We're not talking about individual planning applications.
No, but I am talking about strategic gap, and I am doubting the commitment, to a certain extent, of this council to enforce that strategic gap. And that is my point. And that is the point that I believe the people of my community are concerned with, and I will represent them. So, yes, I'll take criticism, I'll take the things, but actually, we're looking at an error in start. We're looking at a problem of the delivery of the infrastructure, a paper-thin plan, haphazard, and not effective. So, yes, I cannot support this plan. Thank you.
Councillor Parsons. Any further speakers? Sorry, Councillor.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Simpson first, then yourself.
I haven't indicated yet,
Oh.
Mr Mayor.
Sorry.
I will indicate at some point.
Mr. Wright, can you keep your hands in your pocket, please? Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to come back to the statement about the starting point for this plan and the fact that we declared very early on that we were going to take 3,760 houses from Birmingham, and I acknowledge that those bilateral discussions and the other housing market needs area that were included in the expectations of the borough must have been difficult to negotiate. But there were opportunities as we went along, and as the inspector pointed out, for us to reduce that figure as the process went on. And just to quote from the inspector, North Warwickshire Borough Council chose to maintain the intention to accommodate 3,790 homes, in part on the basis that it would entail additional social and economic benefits relative to a lower figure. The council have not sought to reduce the housing requirement on the basis that doing so would be unachievable or undesirable, notwithstanding that there are greater potential environmental implications of a higher figure. So all the way along, we have stuck to a figure that was based on basically a thumb in the air estimate of the commuting between Birmingham and our borough, and a figure which really had no scientific or evidential base in it from the beginning. Now, one could say nationally there's a housing crisis, and fair enough, there is a huge need for housing across the country. And I suppose one might have expected that, having adopted this very ambitious target and stuck to it, that we would have also seen alongside that a commitment to affordable housing that matched that commitment. But actually, this plan doesn't even do that. It doesn't meet the affordable housing needs that we have, not only for our own growth as a borough and for our residents, but it certainly doesn't meet it for the extra households that we have agreed to take on. Again, the inspector says, the council has set out that affordable housing needs now amount to some 40% of total housing needs. That is substantially greater, absolutely and proportionately, than the annual figure of 112 dwellings per annum in the plan as submitted. So one has to begin to ask oneself, what are we actually going to achieve in terms of benefiting both our residents and indeed making a contribution to the national picture? And clearly the plan that we have hinges fundamentally, since something like 70% of the housing is going to be along the A5. And if you talk to officers, they will say this is the big breakthrough that we've had in terms of this step change that we've taken on. And I, for one, haven't seen anything except really a line drawing of what the A5 is going to look like by 2025, which is when this step change is supposed to take place. I know the money has been allocated, but has anybody seen any concrete plans that actually will convince anybody that we're not going to end up with one huge traffic jam of heavy goods vehicles in and around Grendon, because that bit of the A5 is not in the plan, it's nowhere, it's somewhere in the sky 10 years away. So, and we already have a road that is heavily under pressure. It's a pollution hotspot, which everybody knows will just increase over time. We have a proposal to improve the Dordon roundabout, but actually after that, the stretch is just as it was before. And there is really, I think in terms of the review point that the inspector has set out, he said a review will have to be undertaken around the time that phases 1 and 2 of A upgrades are indicated to be completed. Well, I'm not sure what proposals we have in the paper that's before us to accept this plan, to actually look critically at this element of infrastructure, which is actually the backbone of this local plan. And whilst the inspector, and you know, he was a very fair professional man, and I seriously respect him because I also attended some of the hearings, not all of them, and he did listen. He came back time and again to ask about what was happening about the A5, and actually at one point said, if you don't sort this one out, I'm going to have to throw your plan out. So I'm not convinced that we've actually got to the point where we can accept this plan. We don't have anything concrete in material or design terms about this road, and we have a plan that's based on basically some assumptions that really, at the moment, cannot be delivered.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. Any further speakers?
Councillor Rose.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. probably won't come as a surprise to councillors, but I'll be voting against the local plan today. Very much from a Polesworth-centric viewpoint, that the local plan will disproportionately impact on the villages of Polesworth and Dordon. I think I don't share some of the same concerns about the housing numbers. We live in a country where we have a housing crisis at the current time. People need places to live. It's a sort of fundamental human need to have shelter and have somewhere to live. I don't have the same concerns in relation to that. My concerns are in relation to the disproportionate site allocations that we see in the local plan. That's my concern, that Polesworth, Dordon seem to be taking more than their fair share. I think if the site allocations had been different and we'd have seen development spread more fairly around the borough, perhaps move some of the green belt around as well, share some of that green belt in the north of the borough, then I perhaps would have been minded to support the local plan. However, I'm resigned to the fact that the local plan will pass today. Obviously, politics is about numbers. The numbers are in favour of the local plan, so the plan will pass. One of the things I'm doing in Polesworth at the current time is chairing the neighbourhood plan, and I've spoken to a lot of residents who share my concerns about the local plan and about the disproportionate allocation for Polesworth. They're concerned about being able to go and see the GP. They're concerned about the roads being clogged up, the additional pollution that will bring. They're concerned about the lack of guaranteed infrastructure that we'll see in Polesworth. So I can't come here today and vote in favour of a local plan when so many of the residents I spoke to, and I mean, I'll be honest, I haven't spoken to a single resident in Polesworth who's in favour of the local plan. It seems to be sort of universally, the whole village is against the local plan because they can see how it disproportionately impacts upon us. So I'll be voting against the local plan today. And it's not about party politics for me. It's about Polesworth. It's not about red. It's not about blue. It's just about doing the right thing for Polesworth and for the residents who elected me to represent them. So I'll be voting against the local plan today.
Thank you, Councillor Rose. Councillor Hancox.
I was actually elected in May on a point that I would vote for the local plan on the basis that infrastructure would be provided and I have to stop.
No,
this was through. Infrastructure would be provided to Polesworth and the investment would come in. Polesworth needs investment. Anybody who lives in Polesworth or Dordon knows we need investment in that area. This provides it. Now, we've had a lot of points that we said that infrastructure hasn't been highlighted in the plan. Well, actually, it has, and it clearly states that there are several points. There's actually around 12 points that when a developer comes in for this area to develop it, they have to provide a master plan to the council for obviously acceptance, and it provides the points. One of them is a new primary school, financial contribution to an existing secondary school to ensure there are places for education. It continues on for development of the A5, which obviously we've discussed already. There's also a lot of discussion about playing pitches, development of leisure facilities in the plan. Now, when planning applications come in, we get to vote on them. We know it's here. This is what's got to base those applications. We get to choose the investment that we have in Polesworth, and I'm sure that local councillors like Councillor Rose, Councillor Bob, will all be involved in that, and actually we are on planning as well. So we have more of a say in what's going to happen in our area, and I believe that it is time for us to have the investment in here, and it is in the plan. The last bit is the strategic gap. I have to vote because we have to protect the gap. This stops this. It protects our green belt and ensures that that field is not built on. If I vote against that, then I vote against everything that I've said to people, that I will protect that land from being built on. And for that, I will be voting for the local plan.
Anything else? Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Generally, I have listened an awful lot to what members have had to say, but there's some things I don't recognise. The suggestion that the plan is the way it is because of the limitation of resources. I've not heard one speech in all the years I've been at the council suggesting that we should put more resource into the local plan process. Never. And to raise that now as an issue with the plan is astounding. But the plan went through a whole series of meetings at the LDF. It was discussed at council on a number of occasions. It was discussed at the executive.
we had a significant amount of public consultation. Throughout all of that, nobody ever said, actually, it would be a better plan if we put some more money in it. If you look back through the accounts of the authority, we have spent a significant amount of money on the local plan, drawing up the evidence base for the plan, going through all the iterations of it. This idea that somehow it would have been better if we'd spent more money is astounding. I also the suggestion that somehow Labour's Green Village might have been a paradise. I would say for people who live there, it would be a paradise. For people who live in the Greenbelt, it wouldn't be a paradise. It would be, if anything, taking away the green paradise and carpeting it with development. There seems to be an awful lot of suggestions. I mean, to be honest, a lot of the speeches I've heard have been scaring. They've been saying it might not work, it might not deliver, we might not be able to do something. I can only speak on behalf of the planning board and tell you that, as far as I'm aware, we are delivering, we are coping, and yes, there are struggles. You know, local government in this century struggles to deliver. We have inadequate resources across the range of the services. But the planning team is delivering and will continue to deliver. They will be assisted in that by a group of councillors who are committed to considering planning applications properly and fully and making sure that we make the plan work. Its success or failure depends upon members engaging with it, getting involved with the planning process, understanding what the applications are, turning up to meetings, debating, arguing the right case on each occasion, not simply saying, I don't like it, therefore please vote against it. That's terribly bad, is it? I heard a comment somehow doubting a commitment to the strategic gap. No evidence whatsoever in favour of this doubt. But what I have heard is a real lack of commitment to protecting the green belt. Not once has any of the speakers mentioned the importance of the green belt to North Warwick and the people that live here. But I have heard that somehow putting a new village in the middle of it is a good plan, a good alternative. No, it's not. It wasn't then, it isn't now, and it won't be. We've got in front of us, Mr. Mayor, a well thought out, well argued, and well resourced local plan. There is no such thing in the world as an ideal plan that foresees every possible opportunity, every risk, every change and twist in the national fortunes. All of those have a significant strategic threat to the delivery of every plan. What we have in front of us is a realistic, well-consulted and well-considered vision for the future of our borough. It tries to take into account the threats that we can see, and it provides a strong basis for growth and development of the borough and the protection of the Greenbelt and our ancient communities within. Nothing is perfect. The plan is not perfect. Members of the authority are not perfect. But we can only try and do our best. And the plan requires goodwill, support and hard work from members and officers alike to deliver it and to protect our communities. We don't do that by raising doubts about our ability to achieve. We should all support this. The one thing I can tell you for certain is if we don't have a plan, if we do not approve the plan, then there will be a huge opportunity for unfettered speculative development across the whole of the borough. Do not doubt the risks engaged and involved by not having a plan. If you want to see development in every field, extensions of every village and every community, then vote against it. You know, reap the whirlwind, because that is not a sensible way forward.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Councillor Wilson. Yes, you may take it, please. Yeah.
Just to say, yes, I agree with Councillor Simpson.
that should protect the
Could
green
you
belt.
speak up a bit, please?
We should protect the green belt. I agree with that. But unfortunately, that in the north where we've got no green belt, we've only got green field. So that means then they're going to start building there if you're starting to protect it. And it's unrealistic what's proposed there. That amount of house, it changes the view and the complete part of the village. It will not become a village anymore. It'll become a town then with 2,000 houses. And that's not what it's about. We're destroying its culture and its heritage by doing that. And sorry, I'm just getting so annoyed over this that it's what's in them about it, or saying how good this local plan is. This local plan is not good. It is not good. It's the best you can do out of a bad system. I can understand that. But the point is, the majority of this local plan, the development and employment and all the things that go with it, is going to be in the north, nowhere near the south, nowhere near anywhere else in this borough. And the infrastructure that needs to be put in now, not later, not earlier. Now it wants to be put in and doing it now. So then when it's done, then they can build the houses they want to, if it's okay. And also, I agree totally that it should have been shared out around the borough. I don't think we've had any problems at all, because people and their children want to live in their village with their parents, etc., to do it and around there, and to make the community a strong and safe one. But this is not doing it, not doing it one iota. All it means is all them houses, majority come from Birmingham, and they're going to commute all the way into Birmingham for a job. They commute all the way back here. When it was put closer to Birmingham, it wouldn't pose a problem at all. And I'm totally against it, so I'll not vote for it at all. Thank you.
Councillor Mawson. Any further speakers? Yes, Councillor Wright to sum up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First thing I'm going to say, I'm just going to remind the chamber. We've heard lots of comments about the plan not being visionary and not being inspiring, and yet I will draw the council or the chamber's attention to the Planning Award of 2019, which celebrates success in planning and placemaking. We won this, the national award, only 2 years ago as part of when we submitted our local plan. The local plan is a significant undertaking, and the level of consultation and public involvement has been one of the highest for any issue ever undertaken by this council. Some of the consultation has already been alluded to by Councillor Riley. We consulted on Regulation 18 between the 10th of November 2016 and the 31st of March 17 with over 2,000 representatives. Again, we consulted on Regulation 19 between December 17 and March 18 with nearly 500 responders. How did we consult? We used information at the council house, in our libraries, in our leisure centres, the council website, social media, local newspapers, letters, emails to all those on the local plan, parish newsletters, North Talk, letters and posters, presentations, for example, the area forums, and road shows, exhibitions, displays and interactive workshops. That's what we did. The document is one of the most important and visionary documents we produce. It provides a very distinctly different vision for North Warwickshire compared with previous plans. Almost everyone agrees that North Warwickshire requires more investment, more homes for people to own, live in, more footfall into our market towns, and the other investments that come with meeting the housing needs of that area. Investment in roads and schools, for example. The population of North Warwickshire has stagnated in recent years, only 100 extra people between 2001 and 2011 censuses. And that has meant little change and investment in our areas. This is an ambitious plan, therefore, to bring new life and vigour to our area. We are also stepping up to the plate with regard to our wider responsibilities to the area we sit in by providing some accommodation for those outside our immediate area. Given the reluctance and delay with this approach shown elsewhere, this has indeed been visionary. This is particularly seen with the economic strategy within the local plan. As members will be aware, we host a very large number of logistics employment sites, and whilst there is nothing wrong with that industry, good wages for local school leavers and quite resilient in downturns, we have had the vision of rebalancing our economy and the jobs on offer. That is why we came up with the idea of an expanded site at Myra to provide skilled jobs in the future sectors of the economy. What will become the southern manufacturing site was entirely the idea of this council, not Myra, reflecting the vision that has gone into the plan. Despite these obligations and the strategy, we have tried to limit the strategic impact as far as we can, particularly with regard to our green belt and long-standing policy aspirations, such as maintaining a strategic gap between North Warwickshire and Tamworth. The nature of the planning system is that these policies will always come under pressure, but in adopting the local plan, we will be giving ourselves as much control as we ever can in this system. I accept that development near to places can cause concerns, particularly with regard to the infrastructure to support the development. It's worth remembering that it's not the sole responsibility of the local plan to deliver every last school place or GP appointment, or that's primarily the role for the lead agencies for those areas. However, we will work together to deliver the new facilities identified in the infrastructure delivery plan, which will go a long way towards renewing our places. Excuse me. One very clear example of this is the £80 million awarded last year to North Warwickshire for the A5 improvements between Grendon and Dordon, something which also significantly increases the chances of the whole section of the road from the M69 to the M42 being comprehensively upgraded. Improvements to the A5 has been something a number of public sector organisations have been wrestling unsuccessfully to resolve, and without the vision in the local plan, we would probably still be waiting for any improvement. In terms of delivery, this plan has been tested by the inspector and found to be sound and deliverable. It's again worth remembering that suggestions of new towns were rejected due to concerns as to whether they would happen. No landowner interest had ever been identified and would not have happened quickly enough for this local plan. And on that note, I commend the plan to the Chamber and ask for a recorded vote.
Absolutely.
So this is in respect of item 7B on the agenda. Plan.
Yes.
Councillor Bell.
For.
Councillor Chambers.
Against.
Councillor Denise Clues.
For.
Councillor Tony Clues. For. Councillor Davey.
For.
Councillor Dervix.
Against.
Councillor Farrow.
Against.
Councillor Gosling.
Against.
Councillor Hancocks.
For.
Councillor Hayfield.
For.
Councillor David Humphreys.
For.
Councillor Marion Humphreys.
For.
Councillor Jarvis.
For.
Councillor Jordan. For. Councillor Lees.
For.
Councillor MacDonald.
For.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Against.
Councillor Mawson.
Against.
Councillor Moss.
For.
Councillor Parker.
For.
Councillor Parsons.
Against.
Councillor Hayden Phillips.
Against.
Councillor Owen Phillips.
Against.
Councillor Riley.
For.
Councillor Rose.
Against.
Councillor Simpson.
For.
Councillor Singh. For. Councillor Sandra Smith.
For.
Councillor Simmons.
For.
Councillor David Wright.
For.
That's carried, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Maxey. That vote was carried. Moving on to agenda item number 8. The receiving of the Planning and Development Board. Ask Councillor Simpson to present.
I'd like to move that the minutes of the Planning and Development Board from the 14th of July and 2nd of August be received.
Any speakers on that? And that's in your agenda.
No, page by page.
Page by page, yeah. Page 281, 282, 283, 284, 285, 286, 287, 288, 289, 290, 291, 292, and finally 293. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I beg to move that the minutes of the Planning and Development Board meetings on the 14th July and 2nd August 2021 now be adopted.
Second. Seconded by councillor Moss. All those in favour? I think that is unanimous. Anybody to the contrary? That was unanimous, thank you. I'll ask councillor Denise Cruz to present the special subgroup on the 10th of August and the 14th of September.
I ask that the minutes of the special sub held on the 10th of August and the 14th of September be received.
Thank you. Page 295. Page 296. Sorry, but it's page 294, 295 and 296.
And the minutes of the special sub to be adopted.
Seconded by councillor Simmons. All those in favour? Anyone to the contrary? Appears to be unanimous, thank you. Or any abstentions? Okay, thank you. Right. Item 8C, the Executive Board. I'll get councillor Wright to present.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the minutes of the Executive Board held on the 20th September of this year be received.
Yes, that's a separate sheet. Page 297. Oh, that's it. Yeah, that's, please, yeah. That one. That's it. Sorry. No. That's okay. Sorry. Page 297A. B. C. Oh, sorry, councillor Simpson.
It was me on one occasion. Mr. Mayor, there's just two items on page 297B I'd like to particularly talk about. And if you don't mind, I'll do both at the same time rather than suddenly getting down twice. The first one is item number 21. Sorry, no, it's not. Got that wrong. It's the. I'll deal with item 22 instead. So the next one's on the next page. And this is the issue of the market supplement. I am sort of grateful that the Executive Board considered the market supplement issue. And I would commend particularly the resolved item B to the whole of the council. It is, in my view, essential that we have the resources available to attract the right people to the right jobs in North Warwickshire. A more flexible response to the need to attract market supplements and to operate quickly and efficiently will give us the opportunity or an enhanced opportunity to do that. I think it shows that we are determined, amongst other things, to deliver the local plan, because we're prepared to look at the remuneration for the various posts and to ensure that we do have the right people. This additional recommendation, which we moved at the Resources Board, puts the council in the best possible position to ensure that we attract the right people. And I do think it's absolutely a step in the right direction.
Okay. 297C. Did you say something on that page, councillor Simpson?
Well, there was, Mr. Mayor, I can't find it.
Move on.
I'll have to talk about what I think it was, but I can't find where it is.
Page 297D. Okay. Moved by,
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I now move that the minutes of the Executive Board held on the 20th of September be adopted.
seconded by councillor Bell. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Oh, sorry.
I can't find it, so I haven't read it. So I'm staying.
One abstention.
I can absolutely sympathise.
Right. Item D, the Resources Board. Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that the minutes of the Resources Board held on the 21st of September be received.
Page 298A.
Seconded.
Oh, seconded by councillor Wright. Page 298A. And page 298B. That's all those in favour? Oh, sorry.
I move that the minutes of the Resources Board held on the 21st of September be adopted.
Thank you. I'm just thinking of Colin wanting the. Okay, all those in favour? Any to the contrary? Unanimous, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 9, the exclusion of the public and press. To consider whether in accordance with section 100A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public and press be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by Schedule 12A to the Act. Both by
Move.
So before we do, can I just ask a question on this?
Yeah, sure.
I've just been looking through. I'm not sure how to raise it without actually identifying what the issue is. But within the minutes on page 301, why is item 23 in the public in the private section?
It should be. We'll amend that. Mr. Mackfield, ensure that's amended.
Thanks.
First and second that we go into private sessions, proposed by?
Yeah.
Councillor Wright, seconded by councillor Mawson. All those in favour?